Even if other people don't do this to you, a vast proportion of survivors do it to themselves. This mess is my fault. I stayed. I enabled this mess. I didn't leave. I wasn't courageous. Yep, see, this is on me. You reap what you sow. I don't agree with that. It's been a while since I've done a Proverbs video. I think I got kind of distracted, but let's talk about a proverb. And I don't even know if this is a proverb. I read it and I think it's a proverb, but then I saw it's from a children's song. But the proverb is, watch the donut and not the hole. I don't think this is that old a proverb because I don't think donuts have been around that long, but I haven't done a proverb, like I said, for a while. So here I am. I actually think I got so distracted by the wonders of the am I the asshole world that I got distracted from my whole proverb world. So, but as we know, proverbs are where truth and sometimes myths come together. And I have to tell you also, as a great appreciator of donuts, very clearly, that comes this line. This line is from a children's song. That's where I sourced it to. I don't obviously think that the children's song was about avoiding narcissists, but I think maybe telling the kids to look at what is good and not what is missing. So it's probably supposed to be a proverb on paying attention to what matters, which I guess is the donut and not the whole. I think all of us who are survivors of narcissistic relationships are at risk for being glass half empty people rather than glass half full. And if you are in a narcissistic relationship or at risk for entering narcissistic relationships, thinking that the glass is half full, sadly, is a little bit dangerous. But when it comes to narcissistic relationships, lots of folks got played because they actually did watch the donut and not the whole. They watched the vapid shenanigans, the love bombing, they fell for the manipulation, the lies, the false self that the narcissist was portraying, the sales pitch that is the narcissistic person's ground game. All of that donutty stuff that actually gets us in trouble. But I actually think that the real meaning of the proverb is that it is telling us to look at the good stuff, the donut, and not the empty part, the whole. And that's where it gets a little confusing when it comes to narcissistic relationships. When it comes to new relationships, we do too often look in the wrong place. We look at what may suit our narrative. We look at what may correct a childhood experience. We look at what the world tells us to look at. Yeah, sure, this person's a jerk, but they sure do have a nice car or a great job or nice abs. I mean, not exactly the stuff to plan a lifelong commitment around. This can also happen in new jobs. What a great company! We can ignore the fact that other people have had nervous breakdowns working for this job. It will be different for me. We see this in new relationships even when meeting new friends. When we try to put a positive spin on the narcissistic relationship, especially when it is new, we run the risk of really harming ourselves. Oh, yeah, I met this new person. Yeah, a little late, and they can be grumpy and inconsistent, but they're so attractive. They're really fun. This is really exciting. That is just as bad as missing the red flags, which is what happens when we watch the donut and focus what we believe is the good stuff, the yummy stuff. We are often socialized to do that. We're told, look at the bright side, focus on the good stuff, glass half full, the silver lining, all of that, right? So when the red flags are coming at us at a fever pitch, we're socialized and told, oh, don't look at that donut hole, look at that donut. We are actually indoctrinated out of prudence and good sense, being told to look at the damned donut. And I get it, donuts are hot, but being told to look at the donut when we should actually be looking at the hole. We live in a world where the well-intentioned tenets of positive psychology have been bastardized a bit into toxic positivity. And that is a bit of a problem because we are often shamed when we are not positive or when we view the world through a slightly sour lens. Think positive. Look for the good stuff. Look at the donut. Just ignore that silly hole. I hate that narcissistic relationships have turned the world into a place where we do actually have to look at the hole and not the donut, the opposite of what the children's song is telling us to do. That we need to be on alert for the antagonistic, manipulative stuff that people do and not just get to breathe. However, I do believe that if all of us can get really good at looking at the whole of the donut, and at least initially, and not get lost in the donut of it all, then we can slowly transition into relationship spaces that can grow into something healthier. We just have to go against conventional wisdom, maybe not fully focus on the whole, but balance the donut whole looking, right? And perhaps what all of us need to or hope for are filled donuts, the ones with cream or custard or jelly inside, and then it's all yum and no hole. And as a vanilla cream donut girl from way back, no hole, all filled in sugary sweet goodness, I can now see that my donut choices may have been more wise than my people choices. And unlike narcissists, we can actually make donuts work in our lives in moderation. So I think that where we really end up with this proverb is it's not just about looking at the donut, and it's not about looking at the whole, but it's at looking at the two simultaneously. And ideally, try to find those super healthy folks where it's just a big old filled donut and you're not having to constantly dodge the red holes or the red flags of the whole. And this is where this video gets interesting, because I'm going to take on something that's not so much a proverb, but something that people like to say. And I think it's a real tricky one for folks who are trying to deal with narcissistic abuse. Ready? Today's proverb is, you teach people how to treat you. And before I get to that, if you're new to this channel, please join us. Hit that subscribe button. Join this wonderful community. The comment section alone is worth being on this particular channel. And I think that these proverbs and sayings teach us a lot about what we need to know and don't, and actually not good for us in terms of narcissism. So this idea, you teach people how to treat you, it isn't a proverb. It's a statement that I see lots of coaches and folks who talk about being your best self talk about. And it's all over social media sites for people. I guess it's supposed to teach people to assert themselves or something like that. I kind of wish we had a voting tool on YouTube, because if we did, I'd use it right now, because I'd like to see how well you know me. Does Dr. Ramani like this statement of you teach people how to treat you? It's almost like I want you to pause the video and put it in the comments. Okay, so what's the answer? Does Dr. Ramani like this idea of you teach people how to treat you? No, I don't like it. I actually hate it. And why is that? Well, let's see. Maybe it's the part about putting the entire onus for a person's being treated badly onto themselves. Maybe the narcissist abused you because you didn't show them how to treat you. So once again, let's blame the person being narcissistically abused. Well, after all, you didn't show them how to treat you, rather than keeping the focus on where the bad behavior is really coming from, and then instead teaching the person being abused how to protect themselves and not engage. Because no matter how much a person treats themselves well in an attempt to show a narcissistic person how to treat them, the damn narcissist isn't paying attention, and they're going to always treat you the way that works for them. Little maxims like this one, like, oh, you show people how to treat you, they really anger me. Listen, I understand what the proclaimers of this proverb are trying to do. They're trying to condition you to treat yourself well, with the anticipation that that behavior will be mirrored by others. It's a nice idea in principle. It doesn't work in practice, and it sure as hell doesn't work with narcissists. So let's start at the very beginning. If you had a narcissistic parent or parents, I can promise you that nobody taught you how to treat yourself or treat yourself well, nor did you get any benchmark of decent treatment. You likely witnessed a narcissistic parent mistreat the other parent and yourself and your siblings. So without a roadmap or a template, exactly how is someone supposed to learn how to treat themselves? Schools don't do much better. Sure, they may do some basic stuff about manners and waiting in line, but I actually don't think, especially as kids get older, that there is a sufficient focus on teaching children and adolescents about boundaries, about what toxic behavior is, and about how to walk away when people are treating you badly. Schools, religious communities, and families teach people about stuff like forgiveness and second chances, none of which is going to be useful if you are dealing with a narcissistic person. So, you come out of childhood into adolescence. There's actually very little discourse about how people should be treated. Basically, not a lot of people are told exactly what are the minimum requirements for a healthy human relationship. I'm shocked when it is still a revelation to many people when I tell them that the basic starter kit for a relationship is respect, kindness, compassion, mutuality, self awareness, and growth. When is this taught? Again, if you don't know it, how are you going to you don't even know how to ask for this in a relationship. I actually think we get more BS lessons about not quitting relationships and staying in bad situations and giving second chances and relationships are hard than we are taught about what actually makes a relationship good and healthy. Then, from adolescence, when you come into adulthood, dating, work relationships, friendships, and narcissism, all bets are off. As I said, many people who experience narcissistic abuse are confident. They feel good about themselves before their relationships begin, and they do actually teach people how to treat them. There's lots of healthy people out there who know about boundaries and self-respect and self-value, but they may not know about love bombing and gaslighting and rage and invalidation and devaluation and discarding and hoovering. They may not understand that charm and charisma are a mask, and they may actually keep trying to teach the narcissist how to treat them and simply be met back with gaslighting and minimization. So then, this person who is trying to teach the narcissist how to treat them keeps teaching them, and the hole just keeps getting dug deeper. The only teaching that needs to happen is to teach someone how to get the hell out of a narcissistic relationship early, while the getting out is good. I suppose there's a bit of a half-truth in this idea that we teach people how to treat us. But there's also the rest of the story, that people need to be taught how to treat other people. Because the narcissists don't know how to treat other people, and frankly, they don't care. We cannot be the only teachers for ourselves in the midst of a world that is full of entitlement and incivility and dysregulated rage everywhere. In fact, if someone tries to teach a narcissist how to teach them, it's a bit masochistic because they're then going to have to deal with humiliation and rage. That's more likely than the narcissist taking that lesson and saying, oh, that's how I'm supposed to treat them, and implementing it. Because once people get into narcissistic relationships, there can be a tendency to make justifications and excuses, perhaps even blame yourself for not teaching them how to treat you. It's not you. While I do believe that, yes, self-respect and self-awareness are important and valuable and set a standard for others in how they treat us, the fact is it gets a person nowhere when it comes to a narcissist. I will say this. If you do try to teach the narcissist how to treat you early on, they may leave. If you have good boundaries, you don't fall for their BS, you recognize the red flags early, and you don't attempt to justify their behavior or give them second chances, you may find that the narcissistic person may get up and leave the relationship, which is a win. So having good boundaries, healthy expectations, and a willingness to be pretty strict in how you identify red flags has the potential to weed out the narcissist early on and not get you into a hell of feeling that you need to teach them how to treat you. Let's face it, it's a lesson that they are not willing to learn, and it's not worth your exhaustion or you depleting your bandwidth trying to do the impossible. The bottom line is this. A lot of these sort of easy, breezy, self-affirming sentiments are nice and simple. But these nice and simple statements don't tend to hold true with narcissistic people, and they can actually get people sunk into cycles of self-blame. And there's a real challenge if you're in a narcissistic relationship, reading these, again, relationship sites online and their quotes. They're perfectly fine quotes if it's two healthy people in a relationship. But once you get into the world of narcissistic relationships, reading a lot of this online content can actually lead to a lot of shame, which is something I don't want for any of you. So when you read these kinds of pithy things, remember, a lot of it doesn't apply to narcissistic relationships. You reap what you sow. Originally, it was as you sow, so shall you reap. The original writing of this proverb is from the King James Bible, and it's from Galatians. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And again, we've taken that into ordinary conversation as saying, you reap what you sow. We know what this means. It's really a biblical riff on karma. You get back what you did. You do a bad thing, it comes back. You do a good thing, it comes back. Would that that were true, right? Anyone who has ever been through a narcissistic relationship knows that life isn't fair, and if there is karma, it may not come around in this lifetime. And the narcissists, frankly, don't always reap what they sow. As I see it, there's sort of two directions into which this proverb can go. Let's start with the narcissist direction, because this is kind of where we hope it's true, right? The idea that the messes, the lies, the deceit, the betrayals, and the general meanness that the narcissistic person reaps will come back at them. I have had clients asking me this for well over a decade. Will the narcissist reap what they sowed? It depends on what you mean by that. Ultimately, the narcissist has to live in their insecure, constantly unsettling, never enough world. That can't be pleasant. Now, are they happy? Again, it depends. It's a very transient happiness. I've literally been in therapy sessions with narcissistic people who, of course, they can't stay off their phones, and they'll be sitting there and they're reading their emails and during therapy and be bemoaning how awful their lives are and how everything is so unfair to them. And then a piece of good news comes in, and I'll be like, oh, I'm the man, I'm the best, I'm so happy. And that will last until the next frustration happens. It's all very shallow. But many people feel they can't release the narcissistic abuser from their mind until they see that they sow what they reaped. That somehow they want to know that the narcissist will be punished. That's not going to work, because if you stick around for that, your mind is still in the relationship. You end up putting your life on hold and waiting for them to get theirs, which may or may not happen. The ultimate play is to go out there and you do you. Be your authentic you and just release them. Sometimes the narcissistic people do get theirs. For example, we see it in high-profile cases like Jeffrey Epstein or Harvey Weinstein. They go to jail or their lives are in ruin. And in a way, many in the world kind of give out a collective sigh like, in this case, the reaping and the sowing added up. Justice is soothing to the human psyche, especially when it involves narcissistic people. But I am warning you, more often than not, you do not see this happen. Some of that is because narcissism doesn't really go deep. So the narcissist in your life, for example, they may have cheated on you and quickly marry the next person and quickly have a new family, and their business continues to go well. It can look like they made a mess of your life and have just waltzed off into the sunset. But since they do not feel deeply or have close relationships deeply, they are able to do these superficial runs into the sunset. But you know you don't want this. Superficial life is nothing you'd ever want. You had it. You knew what it felt like. It was empty and it was invalidating. And that is about all a narcissistic person can manage. Maybe the new person will also get irritated, probably will, and then the narcissist will probably just keep going from relationship to relationship, person to person. Nobody's ever going to get anything different than you, unless the new person's just as superficial as them, of course. They'll just get what you got, and superficial people may not care. The new person may experience it differently, which is really why the ultimate happy ending is when the narcissistic person in your life does leave and then finds a new person who is also narcissistic. That can feel a little bit like sowing and reaping, right? The danger of this proverb comes from when it is used to foster blame or reinforce self-blame in those who are in narcissistic relationships. People who find themselves in a long-term narcissistic relationship may often be looked at askance, with people saying, "Why did you stay so long?" Well, I guess you reap what you sow. People who stay in these relationships may be accused of enabling and be told, well, you stayed, you reap what you sow. People who remain in contact with narcissistic family systems may be told, well, you're the one who's staying in touch, you reap what you sow. That can feel very unkind, especially since the majority of people in narcissistic relationships did not understand narcissism, so they didn't even make an informed choice. And obviously, if this happened to you when you were a child's not going to get it. So if it's in your family of origin, you are clearly not responsible for it. But even if other people don't do this to you, a vast proportion of survivors do it to themselves. This mess is my fault. I stayed. I enabled this mess. I didn't leave. I wasn't courageous. Yep, see, this is on me. You reap what you sow. I don't agree with that. The idiocy of the world is that too many people believe that narcissists can change, or that if we just support them and we are nice to them and support their core wounds and listen to their difficult histories, that they'll come around. They won't come around enough in almost all cases, or the changes they make would be relatively minor or minuscule, and certainly not sufficient to make a dent in what an intimate or a close relationship needs in terms of respect and compassion and kindness. But this kind of thinking means that people blame themselves and will often view a narcissistic partner or spouse as a parent may view a spoiled child. I'm responsible for all of this. But you didn't raise your partner, and I don't care how young you were when you got married or met them, you didn't raise them. You may not have not understood narcissism. You may not have had the power to leave it. You may have been at risk if you left the relationship. You may have been worried what would happen to your children if you left the relationship. You may be from a culture or just a system where leaving it would result in too much fallout that would be too much to manage. That isn't reaping and sowing. It's a world that enables narcissism, doesn't get it, doesn't teach people about it, and then blames them for the mess that these relationships are. I am a big fan of personal responsibility. We make choices, we take responsibility for them. But those choices aren't always as informed as they need to be or obvious. Like sometimes in a relationship, a choice could be moving out. Sometimes a choice in a relationship is just merely a shift in attitude. We can also attempt to think differently. None of us are responsible for another person's emotionally abusive or invalidating behavior. They're responsible for their behavior. So this proverb is loaded and really gives a look at how people get stuck, the stories they tell themselves, and the fantasy we have for the narcissist, and the importance of not getting mentally stuck in our fantasy that they're going to change. If good things actually happen to good people and bad things actually happen to bad people, it would be a very different world. We don't live in that place. We can only work with what we've got and use knowledge to inform our choices and our thinking. And then when it comes to your own personal life alone, not involving other people, you can think about reaping and sowing. But when it comes to a narcissistic relationship, please be careful, because this proverb can really result in a lot of self-blame. Good things come to those who wait. Now this proverb, which sits alongside the equally annoying proverb of patience is a virtue, ranks up there as one of the most enabling proverbs. Although it has a sort of biblical feel, its origins are in fact more contemporary, and originally it was written as all things come to those who wait in a poem by someone named Lady Mary Montgomery Curry. So when it comes to narcissism, you know where this is going. Think of all of the bad advice you have ever received. Just be patient. This is just your partner's stress. People say things that they don't always mean. In time, your relationship will work out. And 5 or 10 or 50 years later, you're still waiting. This proverb is very enabling. It supports a sort of passivity and misguided belief that if you're patient enough, everything's going to work out. It's a bad assumption because what it does is that it lets narcissistic people off the hook for a while, the very essence of enabling. And the person who is suffering or struggling in the narcissistic relationship can just be put on ice for a while and nobody has to deal with their pain. Good things come to those who wait also plays upon the future faking of it all. The proverb itself is actually a bit of a future faking proverb. It gets muddled into the hope of the narcissistic relationship, the hope that has too much to do with narcissistic relationships. If I wait, then maybe my partner will change. Maybe my partner will someday see all of the wonderful things that I am. Maybe my partner will want to spend more time with me. Maybe my mother will finally notice me. Maybe my father will finally stop criticizing me. Maybe my siblings will want to stop competing with me. Maybe my boss will give me more credit someday. Good things will come. Will this happen with a narcissist? No. No, they will not. What will come, and I can promise you that, is more rage, plenty of invalidation, lots of gaslighting, manipulation, more future faking, and lots of empty promises. If you buy into this proverb of good things come to those who wait, and you're in a narcissistic relationship, I can promise you that one thing that will definitely come is regret. I'm going to be honest, I remember personally, I was once in a job where it was just abusive and unreasonable and inequitable. It was just a mess. And there was all kinds of gaslighting and manipulation and BS. Awful. And I remember struggling in this job and asking more senior people in this career and them telling me, just be patient. It's a great job. And the people you work with are big names. Now, all of this happened, I was quite a bit younger, and it was before I started studying narcissism, but it just didn't feel right. I ended up staying much longer than I should have because people kept telling me good things will come if I just wait. I ended up having to leave. It was making me sick. I took a less fancy job with less fancy people. Interestingly, I know people who stayed in that other job. They're still waiting for the good things to happen. People who are in narcissistic relationships are frustrated. And frankly, these relationships are frustrating to everyone else. Even if other people don't admit it, they can see when any relationship, including yours, is toxic in most cases. But there isn't a lot that other people can do. And people also don't feel like they can tell you, if you're their friend, that they think your partner is toxic because they may be afraid of losing you as a friend. Families may value family loyalty over protecting people within the family from the family toxicity. So proverbs like good things come to those who wait, they tend to keep people stuck in a narcissistic relationship. It tends to keep those people in a helpless position because frankly, everyone around that relationship feels helpless too. Maybe you're able to get out of the narcissistic relationship. Maybe you're not able. Maybe you can set boundaries or gray rock. But no matter where you are at, you don't have to wait. Good things can come because you can make them come. Even a garden, yes, you plant the seed and you wait, but every day you are weeding and watering and taking care of it. In your life, stop waiting on the narcissist. In your life, good things will come. If you just don't take the passive role of waiting on them, but instead focus on the healthy people in your life, the meaningful interests you have, and stop waiting for good things to come from the wrong source. So here's my revision on this proverb. Good things come to those who are patient with themselves and stop waiting for toxic people to come around. And instead of taking our wisdom from a turn-of-the-century poem, let's keep it real. Let's stop waiting for buses that will never come, waiting for good things that are supposed to come, and take our lives back. A lot of the guidance, the bad guidance people get about narcissistic relationships is be patient. it might just get better. And then even therapists will future fake you, friends will future fake you, family will future fake you. Give it a minute. If it doesn't feel good, take a good, long, hard look at it and start having some important conversations with yourself, and stop blaming yourself and falling into this nonsense that patience is a virtue. Or as Oscar Wilde said it, patience is the most overrated virtue. And all of you have heard this one. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. How many of you use that one to rationalize your narcissistic relationship? So as always, thank you to all of you who have been sending in these proverbs. And you often give me ideas to think of ones I didn't even think of before. This homespun wisdom, as much as it might say, well, why does she even bother? I'll tell you why I bother, because a lot of these proverbs are sometimes good, but also can sometimes keep us stuck. Now, this proverb has a few variations. Some also say it as the devil you know is better than the angel you don't. And the origins of this proverb range from being an Irish proverb, an African proverb, even a line from a Trollope novel. So any of those places. But what does this proverb mean? Basically, that the person who you don't like, or who's tough on you, but you already know, is better than the one you don't. And when we use the variation that involves the angel that you don't, that even a bad person you already know is better than having to take on and learn about someone new, even if that new person is good. Now, this proverb captures a main reason that many people get stuck in narcissistic relationships and often use as a justification for the relationships. Basically, familiarity. Now, let's face it, the narcissist is the devil you know. You may know how they will gaslight you, how they will manipulate you, how they will cheat, lie, invalidate. You may have your expectations ratcheted down. So even though it doesn't feel good to live with such low expectations, at least you know the territory. It all feels terrible, but you get it and you know how it moves. I can't tell you how many people in narcissistic relationships will say, okay, I know this relationship is absolutely unhealthy and awful, but now what? If I go out there and start trying to meet someone new or find a new job or make new friends, I am just going to meet more bad people. And at least I already know this bad person. The idea of having to relive these processes and make more mistakes and experience new hurts and new narcissists feels too overwhelming for many people. So they fall back on the devil they know. Familiarity may be one of the more seductive human experiences out there. When something is familiar, even if it is bad, we are somewhat drawn to it. This familiarity dynamic is a key piece of trauma bonding. When something is familiar, for example, for someone who may have grown up in a family that was invalidating, rejected, or had an unempathic parent, it can be so easy and almost magnetic to fall back into one of these patterns and then justify them or describe them as a connection you can't understand, but it feels deep. That familiarity can get us stuck in toxic relationships. That's the idea of the devil you know. The devil you know is also a proverb about fear, and fear is a central dynamic in narcissistic relationships. The fears for so many people who are thinking of dismantling a narcissistic relationship include the fear of being alone, the fear of being broke, the fear of not seeing children, the fear of disapproval, the fear of never meeting new people. So that fear can get rationalized by this proverb about the devil you know. For me, this proverb is a chilling cautionary tale about narcissistic abuse because so many people stay, especially in intimate relationships, because they're so afraid of being alone, or that the narcissist will move on if they leave, or that they won't meet someone else themselves. And then there are other variables that people bring into it. I've talked to numerous people, especially women, who have stayed in long-term narcissistic marriages and will then feel that if they leave the marriage, they may struggle to find a new partner and rationalize staying in something that is terrible for their health as the devil you know. Another issue that this proverb raises that is so relevant to narcissistic abuse is that it comes down to basically devil versus devil, right? The devil you know, that's your existing narcissist, is better than the devil you don't. And by and large, people often conceptualize that as another person, for example, or a new person who may be worse. But for some people, the devil you don't know may be being single or alone or cutting off from family or leaving a long-term job. The devil you know is different, as a different and unfamiliar future. Perhaps the work then is to start recognizing that the devil or the angel that you don't know may be unfamiliar, and the confusion and loss of confidence and loss of self-esteem that often come out of narcissistic relationships means that many people may feel that they can't make it on their own or be on their own or do on their own. But let me promise you this, any day without a narcissist, even if it is a day alone, is much better than a day with them. We are sold so many narratives about how being in a relationship is better, that being with family is great, that old friends are worth keeping. Sometimes, sure, and sometimes maybe not. A key focus of healing that I hold for people who have experienced narcissistic abuse is to get good with your solitude and recognize that not being invalidated or manipulated or gaslighted, there is nothing that feels better than that. So while the Irish or African or whatever origin of this proverb remains unclear, whoever wrote this or thought this unwittingly was writing about trauma bonds and fear. The idea that I have to stay with the devil I know to avoid the devil I don't. At a minimum, you know this. After being in a narcissistic relationship and surviving it, you know that you have the ability to survive it again. So staying with the devil you know may be familiar, but familiarity is a sucker bet when it comes to toxic relationships. Yes, the devil you don't know may be scary, but sometimes that devil or angel you don't know may be your salvation, whether it is a new person or better yet, just you. That fear of being alone keeps so many people trapped. And honestly, I think more often than not, in so many cases of narcissistic relationship, that devil you don't know is that idea of being with just you. And the awakening and the healing and the recovery from narcissistic abuse is that it's not about just you. Being with you, that is the prize. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning in. And if you like this video, give me a little bit of validation and give us that thumbs up. Thanks so much.